Carol Linnington here from itnewsafrica.com, and I'm at AfricaCom 2017 with Tunde Williams, who's the head of field and solutions marketing for Motorola Solutions. How are you doing today?
Very good.
So we all know Motorola as a mobile phone manufacturer, but what's the company doing apart from this?
Well, one thing I just want to make clear is back in 2011, we actually separated into two companies. So we had Motorola Mobility being the company responsible for what you would refer to as mobile phones, now smartphones, and then the Motorola Solutions part very much focused on what we call mission critical communications. So think about the type of communications a police officer would use. It tends to be what some people call a walkie-talkie, but it also extends into command and control centers, which are pretty much the hub of all the communication that happens in that environment. So we look at those two sides.
All right. So can you tell me a little bit about Motorola's Safe City solutions?
Well, Safe Cities ultimately is about developing technology to help frontline officers in the moments that matter. So we have to consider these officers, law enforcement, fire, they put their lives on the line. And what we're trying to do is develop technology to help them become safer. It varies. It includes designing communication terminals in specific ways to withstand very stringent conditions. It includes use of specialist software to adapt to the specific or very specialized working environments these people put themselves in. But ultimately, it's to make their jobs easier so they can keep you and I safe.
All right.
What it is.
So just to get a little more in depth into this, how does this help prevent crime?
Well, the prevention is, it's really a shift that we're seeing, which is one where in the past, maybe there was a little bit more of a focus on responding to incidents. So, I don't know, somebody gets burgled, you respond to that. Somebody does shoplifting, you respond to that. Now we're thinking, well, what if we could actually start predicting when burglaries will happen, or at least identify the likelihood of these things happening? And this is where we're investing in analytics. And today we're surrounded by massive amounts of data. And if we actually get into this data, we can extract insights, and those insights can lead to us making better decisions around things like the neighborhoods we should patrol. And we're getting to a level where we can be more accurate about how we do these things. So it's not about you need to patrol this general area. It's actually you need to be in this area at this time, and you have a better chance of at least avoiding crime from happening in those cases.
Okay, so how long would it take to train an officer in using these solutions?
The idea of these solutions is they need to be what I would call second nature. We're not in the business of making life difficult for officers. We try to design our technologies so that they are highly intuitive. So if you give you a quick example of a radio, when we design radios, we always consider what people are used to currently. In some parts of the world, they're used to having, for example, two knobs on the radio, if you're familiar with walkie-talkies. So as we evolve the technology, we try to keep form factors fairly consistent, so that there's very minimum retraining required. If we don't do that, you're going to get a lot of pushback from that community, and ultimately, if people don't feel comfortable, they won't use it, they won't feel safe. So that is very much a top priority for us.
So moving away from the human factor, how is AI going to get involved in this?
AI is a very interesting space that is clearly very pervasive when we look at the consumer space. But when you look at public safety, we see lots of potential with AI. Automating processes that in the past would have had a human intervention in there. So I'll give you a very quick example. We're all familiar with situations where we have a missing child. And typically you have a mugshot put up on TV, said, has anybody seen this missing child? And what we're looking at exploring is applications of AI where if you have a team of officers patrolling a street or neighborhood, they have body-worn cameras. We're seeing more and more of these. And we're exploring the possibility of using these smart body-worn devices to actually scan faces, identify people, and increase the likelihood of identifying these missing people. So we see lots of potential in using AI to automate a lot of processes, making law enforcement and public safety not just more efficient, but more effective.
So just to finalize the interview, how would Motorola Solutions protect the officer on the street as well as the population that they're serving?
Well, we'll start with the officer. So in the case of the officer, if you look at radios today, most of them have an orange button at the top of them, and people call them panic buttons. Essentially what they're there for is if an officer gets into trouble, they press it, and it sends a signal to the control center saying that I'm in trouble and I need help. And some technologies provide the location of the officer in order for help to come down to the officer. We're now looking at ways to automate that. So rather than the officer having to press the button, which they may not be able to depending on the situation, we're using that technologies, including AI, to automate these processes. We could have sensors detecting situations, what we call contextual awareness, identifying when the officer is in a dangerous situation and basically pressing the emergency for him. He doesn't have to press it. That has an advantage of increased speed. Help can get to him a lot faster and lead to a better outcome. So if officers are safe and are able to perform better, that helps them do their jobs to keep us safe. So that's how we see it working.
So that is everything you need to know about Motorola's Safe City Solutions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.